you can learn deeper truth about yourself right behind your fear, right behind whatever that you're avoiding right now. If you actually get to do and go through that which you are afraid of, then right after you'll come to have deeper understanding of who you are. And also you might tap into a great source of, courage and understanding and compassion. So so whenever you are, avoiding, whenever you are feeling, oh, that's just too scary. I don't want to do it. I don't want to face it. Eventually we know that we have to face it. Yeah? And when we do, there is a great promise. It's not going to be that scary. It's not going to be that scary. Okay.
Haemin, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
It's going to be a wide-ranging conversation, but for starters, I would love if you would, in your own words, tell us a little bit about you and your backstory and just acquaint us with you and your work.
My name is Haemin. I'm a Buddhist monastic, Zen monk from South Korea. I was educated actually in the US. I went to university here, and then I became very interested in the big questions, what am I? Why are we here? I felt as though I was just thrown into this world without any manual or without any guidance. So I felt like, waking up in a movie theater after the film has been started like 15 minutes earlier. And then you have to just wake up and realize, oh, what's happening here? Oh, this is, oh, Korea. That's where I was born, Seoul. And then, wow, I'm man, I'm Asian. You know what I mean? All this little thing you have to figure it out. So I became very interested in ultimate questions, why are we
Mm.
here? In all those kind of questions. And then on top of it, because I have to serve in my own Buddhist, monastic system, I have to meet lots of, lay followers, and they usually come to me with lots of their personal questions, their own suffering, what can I do? I have this problem or that problem. So I ended up becoming like giving advice about relationships or how to, how like educating children, like something that I don't personally have a lot of experience of. But at the same time, I think I was able to see things much more objectively, maybe because I
Mm.
was not in it. And then I went back to Korea and I created this nonprofit organization called School for Broken Hearts. And so anybody who, was going through difficulty in their lives, whether you have been recently diagnosed with cancer or recently got divorced, or things didn't work out, like the way you imagined, then we would get together and we'll have a group, therapy sessions. So, and then I wrote a books, and which became popular in Korea particularly, and also surprisingly in the Netherlands, and then Brazil, and then Indonesia, and then UK. So I'm just so, thankful for this opportunity. So I just have a new book out, and I'm here.
Excellent. Well, just for a little clarification and to brag for you so you don't have to, when we've talked about the popularity of your books, we're talking millions of copies sold around the world. I think your last book, The Things You Can Only See When You Slow Down, I think it sold something like 3 million copies. So to put that in perspective, that ranks it insanely high on the list of all-time bestsellers. And it's for a reason. The work resonates. And when you talk about, group therapy, or you talk about helping people get through difficult times, that is the title, in fact, of your newest book, which we will get to through the course of our conversation today. It's When Things Don't Go Your Way, Zen Wisdom for Difficult Times. But before we get into the details, I'm wondering if you can orient us around Zen. My wife, as I mentioned before we started recording, considers herself Buddhist, um, and that she has been studying at a Zen monastery for more than a decade now, and this is where I originally got acquainted with more in depth with Zen and that the wisdom from that tradition, and specifically a little bit later your work. So I think that is a little bit of a mystery. Just the concept of Zen or Buddhism is, I think it's lost on a lot of us in the West, and I'm wondering if you can orient us around what are some of the basic beliefs and principles. Maybe you can talk about some of the cornerstones like suffering and um, presence. What are some of the major pillars so that we can orient us for the people who might not be familiar with Zen and or
Right.
Buddhism?
Well, first thing we can remember is that we are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. They come and go. So when you sit and meditate, and a lot of thoughts bubbles up, whether it's negative thoughts about you or, some kind of difficult emotion that you are feeling, and then you realize that those emotions and thoughts, it comes and goes. And you don't have to identify yourselves with those, I would call clouds, clouds that is passing by. And oftentimes we are so caught up in those clouds and thinking that we are in what we are thinking about. We are what other people said about me, we are how I feel right now, we identify ourselves. But we can actually observe it, we can witness it. So we are the witness. We don't have to so enmesh with our emotions and our thoughts and feeling like we are victim, feeling like I'm not good enough, all those negative self-talk. There is a way out. That is, we can just take a second and then realize, aha, those thoughts are passing by, those emotion is passing by, and let's see, what happened. And then 9 times out of 10, it just passed away, within 90 seconds.
Do you feel like um, would you anchor all of Zen or the Zen practice in that what you just shared with us? Is that the core that you are not your thoughts and what you are is something removed from that, something bigger, something that is ultimately has an opportunity to be aware of this, the observer? Is that the foundation of Buddhism?
Oh, yes. So as you are observing, you realize that you are not that which is you are observing. You're not the object of observation. You are the subject, You are here witnessing what's happening. Yeah.
And how does that allow us, like, how ought we think of that? Does this give us in your practice some sort of a freedom, some sort of an opportunity that you think that most of us are not capturing? What does
Yes.
that allow? What does that allow for?
Well, it allows us to feel free. It liberates us. We don't have to be so caught off in our own like victim feeling, feeling of I'm not good enough, all those troublesome emotions that we have. And we are realizing actually we are much much bigger than our thoughts and emotions. um, so there is a promise of liberation, liberation from your own suffering. So and maybe another way of tap into this is experiencing the present moment. If Zen Buddhism is big on present moment. So if you can just look really closely, whatever that you have in front of you, in actually looking, whether it's a car, if you're driving right now, or if, flowers or a book or whatever, then as you pay attention to the things that you are looking at, realize that you don't have a lot of thoughts. Only when you are, ruminating after, then, all kinds of judgments, all kinds of thoughts, bubbling up. But your true nature is that without a thought.
That is so hard for the West to grasp, I feel like, because we have done so much work in the rational thinking mind that we think that that is where all the best stuff happens. We were, the Cartesian dualism that we have a mind and the mind controls the body. And, as I understand what you're sharing with us here and just from other experience that know that we are much bigger than that. As you said, we are the observer of our thoughts. And this present moment, I think what is fascinating to me is that we can talk about the present moment as you just did. And yet we know through meditation or through just experiencing the day to day that it is such a hard ask of a human being to stay in this present moment, right? Meditation, as I understand it, isn't really the act of being in a state of non-thinking. It is the act of continually returning your mind to that state because it wanders. So the question is, out of all of this, how, if this is our true nature, to just be here, comfortable, feeling, but without thought, how come it's so difficult? Why is it so difficult for us to be in what Buddhism calls our true nature, which is just to be, right? To be present in this moment without thought. And you can still feel. So why are we not conditioned to be in our natural state? And why all this extra baggage about the past and fearing about all of these things that haven't yet happened? Why is it so difficult?
I don't think it is that difficult.
says the
No,
monk.
no, no, listen, listen. When you're having coffee, appreciate the coffee, the aroma, the sensations, the texture, all this little thing, if you can actually appreciate as you are drinking coffee, and that's you are in your present moment. When you are having conversation, just listen, what your friend is saying. Then you are in the present moment. You see what I mean? Yeah. When you are, I love to listen to music, So if you are listening to music, really listen, When we are thinking about things while listening, then we cannot appreciate the beautiful song, Likewise, when we are not actually seeing things, especially, when you are having a conversation with your own family member and you feel like you already know everything, I already know everything there is to know about the person, and therefore, why bother to really stay curious and ask questions? But if we can put aside, all those preconceived, knowledge, memories, and then really bring our awareness to the present moment and stay curious and listen and taste, engage. And a lot of happy moment is those moments, that is when we laugh.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of thoughts. Usually when somebody says something really really funny, there is a short 2 or 3 seconds of silence. Yeah, and then we start laughing, right? And so a lot of amazing thing happens when there is this, what I would call the moment of, non-conceptual thoughts, no thoughts is necessary. When we look at beautiful picture, for example, if you go to, art museums or, even, or the painting that your friends draw, and if it's really beautiful, then you go, right? It becomes speechless. You don't
Yeah.
need a lot of thoughts, to appreciate beauty. All this judgment, this looks, or comparison, it comes later. The actual moment of awe, and or when you are encountering something beautiful, or something funny, uh,
Yeah.
you don't think, it just you are in this, very interesting state. And then I know that psychologists, they call it flow state,
Yes.
FLOW. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you are in the flow state, you don't constantly think about yourself. How am I doing? Am I doing all right? You just, you know,
You just are. Yeah.
yeah, you dissolve yourself in this process. You just, without thinking, things happening, right? Spontaneously. Yeah, that's the Zen moment that we try to, introduce.
It's very clear when we talk about it, right? It's very clear that all we have is now. There's never been a time that is not now. And yet we find ourselves trapped, ruminating about the past. Again, as you said, the sort of self-referential, the judgment of something that had already happened. And in the future, what is the saying? 99% of our worries never come true, yet we are trapped by them. And what if we could only actually identify the 1% of things that actually we should be thinking about? Well, we'd be 99% of the way closer to bliss. But when you recognize that all you have is this moment right now, it's just life is just a series of nows. There becomes something interesting has happened to me in the few times where I'm able to actually maintain that state, because that's a full-time job in my world. It's easy for you, but it's hard for me. Um, what I There is a certain um, comfort. There is a stillness. There is all things become beautiful. All things become connected and simple, and yet this the ability to be there, to be here now, to use some famous phrases that have come before us. It it isn't difficult in the way that you describe, because it is, as you say, our natural state. But what are some of the things that we can do to develop that muscle? In meditation, for example, it's the muscle of bringing our attention back to present moment, to the now, to the breath, to the mantra, to the whatever. Um, but and that seems very understandable, but it seems very abstract as soon as we get to, yeah, but I have to go to the grocery store and take the dog for a walk and pick up the kids and go to work. Had a conversation with my boss. All those things, like, if you're not suggesting that we can't plan for things, because we made a plan to meet at 9 a.m. here on the West Coast time to have a conversation. So you're planning. How do you reconcile those things, or how ought someone who's new to this material reconcile the fact that, wait a minute, he's somebody to be present, but I would never be anywhere on time if I was only in the present.
Well, in the present moment, you realize I have an appointment, and then you go to the appointment. What's wrong with that? I don't see anything wrong with that. The thing is, just because you are in the present moment doesn't mean that you are in this kind of, the mind that doesn't have any thoughts in it, and all the time. And what it is embracing, allowing. You allow everything there is to be, whatever the emotion arises. The problem isn't so much the emotion itself, our reaction to the emotions. So as we are resisting to the emotion, I don't like that feeling. I wish that feeling to be disappeared, as we
Mhm.
push that out, and that movement, pushing it away, we call it suffering. It is not the thought in and of itself makes us, suffer, and rather our resistance, So when we are resisting, that's where stress comes in, as we resist a person, situations, or objects. So rather than resisting it, just allow it, allow your mind, let your mind become really big and allow that space, not just your wonderful, aspects, but your petty aspects, your jealous aspects, your, not so flattering, aspects of you. Just let them be there, just so I guess another way of putting it is relaxed state, you know, as we are
Mm.
relaxed, because it's our natural state. When we are relaxed, we don't have to think a lot, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
You have said in a previous book, specifically the things you can see only when you slow down, which is one of the things I referenced earlier in our conversation. Millions copies sold. What is it about slowness that is, makes life so much richer, and why do we move so fast? Is it the world that's busy, or is it what's going on in our mind, or is it both?
Well, I think, it's our mind. We feel as though there is some kind of objective world out there, divorced from our mind. But according to Zen tradition, we said actually there is only one world, that is nothing is final. It is how we interpret things, and that becomes our world. So if you are interpreting things in a negative way, then you feel as though the world is full of negativity. But if you interpret things and see that as a, gratitude, regard that as a, incredibly grateful things, then you feel like you are living in the world of, wonderful people, wonderful situations. I'm not suggesting that we have willful ignorance about what's happening around the world, but we don't have a capacity to know everything. And in fact, we don't want to know everything, right? If you want to just read all the negative news around the world, it's going to take up all of your time. So I think it's important that we have a power to decide, what kind of
Mm,
world we want to live in. So, I say, it's a little bit similar to, watching Netflix. That is, when you open up your Netflix app, you get to choose what kind of genre of, movie you want to watch. Some people, love to watch, romantic comedy, or some people love to watch historical document, or, horror movie, or sci-fi, So for the next 2 hours, whichever genre you choose, that's the world you're going to live. And similarly, you can choose not only, you don't have to feel the victim of your thoughts. Instead, you can create your own thoughts and live in that, realm. So for that practice, I say, gratitude is a, wonderful way of, doing things. And going back to your, questions about slowness, as we slow down, I think we get to appreciate things more, and feel things deeply, more deeply. So even if you are, eating in the most wonderful restaurant, very highly regarded, Michelin star restaurant, and your mind is not there, and then you cannot savor. But even if you are having a, I don't know, very simple, salad at home, if you can actually slowly savor, I'm trying to savor this, the salad, then, you feel the richness, you feel how wonderful, it is, how unique it is, how precious it is. So it is not necessarily what you experience determines your overall contour of your experience, but actually it is how you interpret things and
mm.
how you appreciate things.
I am working on my next book, and this idea of presence has I've become obsessed with, and have since my early experiences with Buddhism, specifically the fact that literally all we have is now. And I was taught that the way to be in the moment, be in the present moment, that an effective way is to just visit the senses. What are you smelling? what does it feel like? As you said, to savor the salad, for example, would be what is the texture of the lettuce as it hits your tongue? What are the smells as you lift the forkful of salad towards your mouth, that you can probably smell something on the dressing, for example? And I'm wondering if you could teach me for a moment, is that the right way of being present? It feels very effective to me, but I got to think that there are some ways that I'm falling short of that objective, or maybe there's some other practices that you could teach me about how to actually be present.
Well, our mind cannot do two things at the same time. In other words, if you are actually feeling, how my shoulder is feeling right now, or how my, breathing, is feeling in my stomach, then our, thoughts pause because we cannot do two things at the same time. So it is a great way to pause and coming back to the present moment is to check in with our own body. How am I feeling? How's my shoulder feeling? Or some people tend to have maybe chest or shoulder or lower back, whichever area that gets tense up, and then just ask, how is that part of my body is doing right now? So that's like one great way to do it. And another way is mantra. You talked about mantra. Yeah. You can say this moment as you breathe in, and then as you breathe out, only moment. And then as you breathe in, you say this moment, and then as you breathe out, wonderful moment, you know? So this
Mhm.
moment, only moment. And this moment, wonderful moment, and you can have this practice as a way to slow down and then brightening your mind, um, and then simply, whenever you are caught in sort of negative states, just become mindful of that particular state. So as soon as you become mindful of that, you are stepping out of that situations. So you are no longer caught in that state. So I think suffering can become incredible opportunity for us to practice this, going back to present moment. And we don't have to identify ourselves with that, whatever the negative thoughts or emotion that is appearing in our mind.
This, I think this is an interesting opportunity for us to dive into your most recent material, which is called When Things Don't Go Your Way, Zen Wisdom for Difficult Times. So this idea of suffering, it seems like the goal with so much of our culture is escapism, right? What people don't realize when they just go to scroll Instagram, there's sort of a desire to escape, to feel a little dopamine hit, escape from their present reality. And the reason we might want to escape from that present reality are numerous and myriad, right? Maybe because our spouse is frustrated with us, or we didn't have, we just, someone hurt our feelings, or we're in a looping pattern of judgment about the review that we just got at work, or the state of the world, or there's so many things that have pulled us away, that we end up looking for sort of escapism. And it's understandable because these things are painful. But is what you're positing that it's by actually acknowledging that you're angry or scared or upset, it's actually in going to that thing that you take its power away? Or how could you clarify this for us?
Well, you can learn deeper truth about yourself right behind your fear, right behind whatever that you're avoiding right now. You know, if you actually get to do and go through that which you are afraid of, then right after you'll come to have deeper understanding of who you are. And also you might tap into a great source of, courage and understanding and compassion. So so whenever you are, avoiding, whenever you are feeling, oh, that's just too scary, I don't want to do it, I don't want to face it, eventually we know that we have to face it. Yeah? And when we do, there is a great promise. It's not going to be that scary. It's not going to be that scary. Okay. So we can go through with this. And behind it, as you are going through with this, you see, oh, I don't know why I spend so many hours, worrying about, avoiding all those things, why did I do that? Then you will feel, a little bit of gladness that you went through, and you say, oh, maybe it wasn't something that I had to worry so much about.
What about where does addiction come in? Like why is that so prevalent? Whether it's, alcohol or drugs or social media or dopamine or like, even in the title of your book, right? It's Zen wisdom for difficult times. Are we truly in difficult times? Are these times more difficult than times 10 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago? How do you reconcile the fact that you're able to acknowledge that we're in difficult times, but that all these things are things that we can move through really quite reasonably if we are willing to sort of confront them, to be with them?
Right, right. So, I mean, there is no way of knowing whether my difficulty is greater than people who fell, like 100 years ago or that, 1,000 years ago, because it is all subjective, right? And if I
Yes.
feel this is very difficult, then it is very difficult. And but the reason why it feels difficult is because we are resisting it,
Mm,
you know, or we are grasping certain idea, this is how it has to be. And then things didn't, go away like the way we imagine. So it isn't so much the situation, it is our grasping or resisting to the situation that creates suffering. So as soon as you realize that, oh, it is the act of grasping that is suffering, like you imagine that by the age of, let's say, 35, I imagine myself to be married and have a house and whatever. And then I don't have none of them. And therefore I feel like a failure, for example. However, imagine, like, realize that that idea is, completely artificial, completely arbitrary, and you are just holding on to it. Because you're holding on to it, that creates suffering.
mm,
Not necessarily the world is trying to make you suffer. It is just the idea that you created, and then your grasp onto that idea that is, making you suffer. Whatever the goal you have by the, within 2 years or 3 years, I wish I had this and that. And then if that condition is not met, somehow I feel like failure. Nobody is saying that you are failure. It's you who who had this grandiose, ideas and holding on to that thought. And there, however, if you can just stop and appreciate right now, what's happening around you, you know, I said something, on my Instagram 2 days ago. That is, only way to feel happy is to realize that you are already happy. If you are like making a lot of effort to be happy, and it instantly creates the distance between future, you who will, accomplish things and become happy, and then present me, that is, I feel like lacking something. It is not good enough. So in while you are making effort, you feel unfulfilled. So rather than trying to see things that is not right, we can, look for the things that is actually wonderful, you know? So I talk about, gratitude, practice, which is very, very popular and a lot of people are practicing it. Um, but when we are feeling, grateful, we don't resist, we feel grateful for what it is right now, right? So this
Yeah.
resistant tendency is alleviated, and then grasping tendency is also, uh, pause. It gets paused because we feel grateful for whatever we have right now. We are not looking for something else or something better. So uh, if we can just bring our mind and just realizing that it's not the people or the situations that is making me suffer this way. Instead, it is my reaction to the situation that creates so much suffering. And can I, allow all those, if you feel a lot of suffering, just allow the suffering to be there because those sufferings are impermanent. It comes and goes. you know, the bodily, sensation of, I don't know, disappointments and whatnot, it can maybe you feel a little bit of tenseness here, something, but that, whatever the sensation, it doesn't last, no more than 90 seconds.
Yeah, there's a desire for us. This is the escapism culture that, leads to addictions of all sorts, right? The desire to escape the rejection that we felt, or the uncertainty about our future, or the loneliness, or the conflict, or burnout, or whatever it is that we're experiencing. And if I'm going to play back to you what I just heard, it's in your view and in the Zen tradition that it's okay, let's feel that loneliness for a little bit.
Yes.
Let's just go right into it. What does it feel like? What does it feel like in my body? What is it? Oh, and in a sense, you're sort of making friends with it. And it's the making friends with that, the acceptance. And that sounds very difficult for a Western mind to accept the feeling of loneliness rather than going and doing something about it. That I think that's a lot of we've set ourselves up um, for some challenges
Right.
culturally. But the irony, if I'm hearing you correct, is that if we just allow the loneliness to be lonely, that concept will actually pass. And in your words just a moment ago, like in some cases within 90 seconds, it can feel terrible, but it only feels terrible for 90 seconds. So if you can stave off, grabbing that bottle of vodka or scrolling Instagram or whatever your vice may be, your escape mechanism, is it true that you're positing that we can actually feel maybe even comfortable in that moment? Is that what acceptance feels like?
Acceptance is if we try so hard to accept things, it's that's something
It's
that
the
you
trying.
can, yeah,
It's the Yoda, right? Do or do not. There is no try.
exactly. When we are trying to do it, it's a okay, resistance. You are just resisting it. Um, so it's more like, rather than using the word acceptance, can you just allow it? Let it
Allow.
be there, let it be there just for, 90 seconds without labeling it. When we label it as bad or terrible or it feels sucks, if you just label it, in a negative terms, and if you just come back to that label and create story around it, and thereby thinking again and again and again and again, like a broken tape record, if you just hear the same narrative within your mind again, I'm not good enough, like then that feeling will come back again and again, because those thoughts narrative is feeding, you know. However, if you can just stop all of this and just allow that bodily sensation of disappointment or rejections or burnout or anticipation or anxiety, whatever that is, just let it be there. and then see if you can find it after, 1 or 2 minutes.
Surprisingly powerful. I do want to speak specifically about burnout. When we jumped on um, our recording for today, I was reading what you've just written again in a book that I absolutely highly, highly recommend. When Things Don't Go Your Way, Zen Wisdom for Difficult Times. You write at length about being burned out and what you call the state of being joyless. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Um, yeah, if you have a lot of, task, a lot of work, then you don't have a lot of time for yourself. There are things that you have to do, and there are things you want to do. And you are just only doing things that you have to do, then of course you don't feel joy in your life. Um, Whenever you feel that way, if you can, see if you can just take a short walk if you have time, or go to your favorite museum. Just carve out a little bit of time just for yourself, and so that you get to do what you want as opposed to what you have to do, right? um, and also, um, I what I would call small but certain happiness, that is there anything that you really enjoy doing? But it's not a spectacular big things. But for me, I have a favorite coffee shop in Seoul, and I love to go there at 10:30. Because that's the time when the coffee shop is quiet and there's no more people. And that particular coffee shop has a wonderful chair. I really like the lighting. And so if I can just sit there and sip a coffee and then just relax, that's the great moment of happiness. So don't look for monumental, like a milestone. We've imagined that we will be happy only if we buy a big house, only if I got married, only if I got that promotion that I wanted. But instead, look for small things that actually is going to make you feel joyous, and do more of that, you know?
This idea of play is something I'm obsessed with. And play, like creativity, I've written at length about creativity. The show talks, we talk a lot about it with the guests. And I think it's an amazing superpower. But just as it's not difficult to see that creativity has historically been thought of as a nice to have, as whimsical and playful, but not based in anything that's going to really, that has been the dominant narrative. And we know that that's factually not correct, right? Everything around us was created by us,
Right.
everything and so without that creativity, we would be stuck as a species. And yet the there are so many other things that have also been trained out of us. One, I believe, is the ability to play, to be joyful, to have levity. And is it your thesis that it's literally can be as simple as finding these, as you call them, small but certain happiness, aspects? Is it a repetition of those? Is that the solution to us reconnecting with these native pieces of ourselves that have been trained out?
Right. Yeah. So if we can just experience uh, aliveness again, I think we want to feel alive. And we do that when we encounter something new. So whenever we travel to new destinations, we feel like we are, alive again. Um, that's one of the ways to feel that way is stay curious. Just stay curious about things. Even if you are just, driving through the same, pathway, stay curious. What's new, or just, even if you go back to your home on the same path and see if you can go to, different path. And you can do things a little bit differently. Rearrange your furniture, a little bit at home and be creative in that way. Or, try new food that, a friend of mine invited me to Ethiopian, restaurant for dinner. That would be new to me, and that would be
Yeah.
interesting. So be open and willingness to experience something different than what you're already familiar with. Try, genre, whether it's a movie or a book that you are not, completely familiar with, you know, or order different type of, drinks, not just the same, cappuccino, but order something else. So if we can just create this, moments of trying, being willing to do something differently, just a micro, small moments, not just drastically different, and yet being open to experience it, that's going to make you feel joy again, like, that's interesting.
Is it true that most of these things, when, I can think of certain people that if I asked, like, if you had to seek joy right now and you had, 5 minutes to yourself, what would you do? Do you feel like most people are capable of that? Or is that even something that has been trained out of us? Because I'm thinking of a couple people in my life that if I asked that, they would not know where to start. So is it, where would you guide us to look for the things that bring us joy? Like you described, that particular chair and the act of sipping the coffee when the coffee shop is quiet and the light. And there are so many people who are so busy that haven't slowed down for 10 years, that have to take the kids to the thing and do the work. And then they got their, practice after work. And then, there's just from one thing to the next that they've even lost their understanding of what brings them joy. Would you have any prescription or advice to that person who may be listening right now?
I think it's important to we sleep longer. So if you are that tired, allow yourselves to extra 15 minutes to sleep longer. uh, I think it's important that the quality of our sleep, determines overall our daily mood.
Mm,
So when you are sleep deprived, then of course I don't feel like to do anything, you know? So rather than staying up late and scrolling, through your Instagram or watching TV, see if you can go to sleep 1 hour early, you know?
mm.
Maybe next day you'll find yourself, physically and mentally better state where you can actually appreciate things. And then maybe you can look at your own child, and say very nice and warm things in a loving way. So I think the first and foremost, it's important that we have a really good sleep. And
Mm,
then, we exercise regularly and take good care of our body. That's kind of fundamental, right? So
yeah.
when we are healthy, then we are more, receptive, more willing to try new. So
Ah,
if you don't feel like exercising, take a walk, go to your favorite park, so always try to, take good care of your body, and that will also help you to take good care of your mind.
well, there is something also novel, right? What I heard when you were saying, try something new, be curious, stay curious. That novelty, doing something for the first time, watching a movie that's from a different genre, or going. That's why travel is magic, right? Or going to a restaurant that's not on your normal list of the four restaurants that you go to by your house. That there is something that shifts, traveling, driving home a different way. What I love about your work, and especially this most recent book, those are things that are accessible to all of us, right? If you took a different bus route home from work one day, or just the smallest things we are seeking, I feel like, to just, oh, if I could only go to Hawaii for a month and then I would be rested. well, what about what's available to you right now? Is this a problem that you see in our culture, or has this been, through all time, or is this something that we see now? This desire to have some big major thing. It's so colossal that we're missing all of the small opportunities that are hiding in plain sight right before us.
I think it's our human, nature. It's not unique to right now. We plan things and we imagine only if those conditions are met, only if we accomplish what we really want, then we will finally be able to relax. We will be finally able to feel, oh, I'm going to allow myself to feel happy, only then. And then up until then, it's just hurry, hurry, hurry. We have to get to somewhere, it's not enough. We still have, more things to do and we cannot relax. However, I think, we do need to relax. And in order to get to that milestone event, it may take years, right? And we don't know whether we even get to that state. So along the journey, we have to enjoy the process, right? Enjoy the journey itself, not just the destinations. So while we are, having this journey, take a look around, smell the, fresh air and do the things that you can do every day and do it in a kind of, genuine, positive way. That is, when you are receiving coffee, from your favorite, coffee shop, for example, just give a heartfelt thank you. It's like, things that you do every day, but just do it in a little more genuinely. When you are, kissing your child and say I love you, just do it a little more, attentively and took some time. When you are taking some time and doing things in a slower way, then the other person can feel it, right?
Yeah,
Rather than, yeah,
that is a thing that my wife Kate is so good at, and one of the reasons that I became really interested in learning, because when you have someone who actually can direct their attention in a way that is present, you feel it. It is a
right,
different feeling, right? And
right,
what I'm hearing from you is that's the same feeling that your child can feel the attention, sort of the gift of your attention, and that it has also a similarly profound experience and a profound benefit for you as the kisser, right? You're able to
right.
appreciate that moment, and it is that presence. Um, there was a piece in this most recent book. I'm trying to find it right now. Um, I have it highlighted. Here it is. The courage to say I can't. There was an interesting twist because, especially, I'm going back to all of so many of the trappings of living in a Western world with a Western mind, and um, the idea of saying I can't is like, oh, never say I can't, because then you're programming this negative mindset. And you've talked a lot about having a positive, open mindset, looking for things and gratitude. And yet there's a piece of us here in your book that you're suggesting that we say, I can't do it. After you've worked up the courage. It took courage to say that I can't do it. I'm wondering if you can explain that.
Yeah, like usually there is a lot of social pressures, that social like expectations from your own family or your boss or society, at large. They're expecting you to behave in this way. And without really, thinking about, do I really want that? Do I really want to, become, whatever my parents want me to become, or whatever the society want me to have? So you have to have, ask this question, is this for me or not? If
Mm,
it's not for me, then you have to be courageous and say, this is not for me. I can't do this. I'm going to look for other ways. I will find my own way. Um, I'm sorry to disappoint you. However, I think there might be a better way for me. So rather than blindly just following whatever you are taught to follow, walk along that path, um, ask yourself, if this is something that you really want to do.
How do we get good at listening to ourselves and knowing the difference between a part of ourselves that just doesn't want any conflict or the resistance cycle that you talked about and what we truly want? Because seems like another thing. You would almost call it intuition. Like how do you differentiate the things that you truly don't want versus the things that are just difficult?
I think people may not know what they want, but people have a pretty good idea of what they don't want, right? So, a lot of people kind of instinctively, they know that this is not for me. I don't like this environment. I don't think this work is not for me. Um, you just have this very gentle, quiet voice within you. Usually this instinctive, voice, wisdom, you know, comes up in a very quiet, from the back of your mind, quietly, so you have to just listen to it, this quiet voice. And then your voice says, oh, I don't think this work is not going to work out for me. And then you ignore that voice and just keep on doing that work again and again because you felt like this is the only job I could get, or because my parents or my, wife or husband expect me to do this. Then along the way, you will see that, oh, this is not going to work out. Then you will get to a point I have to make up my mind, regardless. Because if I just continue doing this,
Yeah.
it's not going to be good for my health. I come home becoming so anxious and stressed. I don't think this is good for any of the people around me. So just listen to that quiet voice, inner wisdom that's whispering to you, whether it is, for you or whether it's not for you.
It's very, very powerful. And you do a beautiful job of explaining that in the book, I might add. Again, the title of the book, When Things Don't Go Your Way. So my last question is a it is one of the things that when I, as a person who is interested and passionate about Zen and Buddhism and awareness practice and um, presence, when I stumble most is when someone asks me, well, if I'm so busy allowing for all of the shitty things that happen to me, how can I both be okay with that? And isn't that then a license to not achieve or to have preferences or to, am I just allowing everything? If I'm just allowing everything, that means I allowed myself to not perform well at work and I was fine when my boss fired me and I'm fine, not getting up off the couch to take care of my physical body or to my mental and emotional state. How do we, this is where where the length of my ability to explain this is truncated. And I would love for you to help me understand how we can both allow all of the things that happen and still have preferences. I would prefer to live in this state. I would prefer to, be fit and healthy. I would prefer to eat well. So how can we simultaneously allow for what is and have a desire or a preference?
When we are allowing things, it doesn't mean that we are okay with everything. Some things we are not okay, right? And that's the
Okay.
first thing. And then second thing is that when we allow, we should also allow the thoughts that is coming up to us. That is, this is not fair. When that thought comes up, then you have to also honor that, thoughts. Acceptance doesn't mean being a doormat. You don't let other people to come and, stamp, you just walk through you. You just have to also listen to your own inner voice and honor your self-respect, honor what your body wants, honor, um, how you feel in your own relationships. So it is a delicate, dance between what I call, the what me of me, that is the person that I want to become, and then me of others, that is other people want me to become. you know. So we have to dance between these two poles. I have to honor what I want, but at the same time, I have a certain obligations, right? And I also have to do those obligations too. So without ignoring neither of us, honoring both and doing in a balanced way, that is the path to happiness.
Thank you very much for being a guest on the show. I could ask you questions all day and all night and never be satisfied, but maybe that is a message for my level of acceptance, an allowance, I will say, instead of acceptance. It is an absolute treat. I also have to give a shout out to your earlier works, Love for Imperfect Things. That was the first book that I heard of in your universe. And again, the things that you can only see when you slow down, how to be calm in a busy world. These are very profound works. Again, millions of copies sold, and not on accident. No one achieves that level of success without having done something truly brilliant, was wise and unique. So I want to say thank you for putting this work out into the world. Is there anywhere else that you would direct us? Again, when things don't go your way is what we should dive into right away. But anywhere else you'd like to direct our attention to the work that you put out in the world? Is there a specific place we can tune into you and your practices beyond just the book?
Well, I have Instagram account. You can follow me and see what's, going on with my life. And also I, share some of the teachings, through Instagram. And also I have my own personal website. And if I
Oh,
am to do any kind of retreat or whatever, I will make an announcement there. Yes, it'd be
mhm.
a great way to connect with me.
Excellent. Haemin, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. We'll have you back anytime. And I apologize for maybe personalizing today's episode a little bit too much, but I'm fascinated by your teachings and the Zen tradition in which you practice. So thank you again from myself and Haemin. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for paying attention to what we do.
Thank you.